I love trucks of all types. Even when I was a little boy at 4 years old, my mother would say, "You love trucks." I do. I always loved trucks. I still do. Nothing changes. Sometimes, you might become president, but nothing changes. I still love trucks.
Pickup trucks represent a lot of things in our American culture, but they tend to represent different things to different people. For right-wing America, trucks are political. I'm Yasmin Khan with The Breakdown, and I live in Texas, so I'm actually pretty familiar with truck culture. However, I grew up in New England, so I still think that I can kind of view these things with an outsider's eye, whereas people who were born and raised here may not be able to. That said, as much as I'm sure I carry a torch for Texas in my heart as a transplant, I've never fully embraced or loved Texas culture. And by the way, I've been here for over 20 years, right? So in that time, I've never worn a cowboy hat or cowboy boots, and I don't want to. I don't care about church or football on Sundays. I put beans in my chili, which is like sacrilegious here. And I know that these are stereotypes, but that's kind of what we're talking about today. And what are the stereotypes associated with truck drivers? For one, they exist in the South, specifically in Texas, and maybe in places like the Rocky Mountain states, the types of places where the cowboys roam or used to roam. They're typically, though not always, driven by men who may or may not need them to carry a lot of stuff periodically, and they are great for that. What else? Country singers really seem to have an interesting relationship with their trucks, and this one's not really a stereotype, but in these flood-prone Houston streets, a truck that sits high above the road is certainly a valuable asset. But some less friendly stereotypes are that they are symbols of toxic masculinity, aka insecurity or overcompensation. The owner probably has a gun or two stashed somewhere in the cabin, so maybe think twice about honking at the truck that just cut you off on the freeway, which they love to do. And as people, still talking stereotypically, remember, truck drivers are probably a little obnoxious, maybe a little less considerate of others, less considerate of rules that they feel don't or shouldn't apply to them. Politically, they're probably conservatives who are more concerned with their freedom to drive that thing than they are about the environment. And trucks, I would say more than any other vehicle, are cultural symbols with a lot of history and a lot of baggage. And of course, there are exceptions to all of the above. Stereotypes exist for a reason, sure, but they are not all encompassing. I know lots of Democratic voters who drive trucks for one reason or another. I know women who drive trucks. I know men who I wouldn't consider to be toxically masculine who drive trucks. In many ways, it's just part of life down here, and it doesn't always have to go much further than that. Now, all of that said, I've never seen anyone driving around these parts with a Trump flag hitched to their Honda. An opinion piece published in the Washington Post talks about this specifically, quote, "the evolving political symbolism of the pickup truck." The author, Paul Waldman, begins with a quote from Howard Dean from almost 20 years ago. He said that Dems need to appeal to, quote, "guys with Confederate flags on their pickup trucks." Now, in recent years, those Confederate flags, which usually stuck to the more rural areas, have been replaced with Trump flags, and emboldened by the current political climate, they've left their rural safe spaces, venturing out and encroaching on suburbs and cities. And no, not everyone in the South is a Confederate sympathizer. I'd say that those guys are still a significant minority around here. Howard Dean caught a lot of flack for the insinuation of his comment years ago, and rightfully so. But while he may have stumbled in his words, and if anyone remembers his presidential run, he stumbled quite a bit, the issue he was trying to bring awareness to is still relevant today. The Democrats could and must do more to reach out to people that they perceive to be unsympathetic to their mission and platform, because for as much as they keep neglecting large swaths of the population, the Republicans are doubling down on them, strengthening their base, and weaponizing culture in their political efforts. And that's not to say that the Democrats don't engage in culture wars, whether by initiating them or just responding to them. This video and the Washington Post piece could be considered a response to the pro-masculinity lobby on the right. My saying that a person's words shouldn't be dictated by the vehicle they drive could be considered a cultural commentary. The left asserting that many of the traits that have traditionally been celebrated as masculine are dangerous to people and to society could be considered a cultural attack against those who grew up valuing those traditionally masculine traits and lifestyles. People take things like that personally, and you can't blame them for doing so. If you grew up idolizing your father or grandfather for embodying those traditionally masculine qualities, an attack on those qualities could be interpreted or internalized as an attack not just on someone you love, but on their legacy and everything they represent. And no one likes or wants that. Today, trucks are luxury purchases, with truck prices exceeding those of Mercedes and BMWs, and in some cases getting into the six figures. Truck drivers are more diverse today than they ever have been. In other words, not every truck driver is a rancher or a farmer living out in the sticks, and politically they shouldn't be viewed or treated as such. Now, even with that said, it's not impossible for someone from outside of a culture to enjoy or embrace a culture just because it's fun. And isn't that what people want? To share the best parts of their culture with the world, to bring people in? I know a lot of brown uncles who love country music. My own immigrant grandfather has seen every Western movie that's ever played on TCM, and he used to drive a pickup truck. It's not about picture perfect and stereotypical masculinity, or it doesn't have to be. A masculine man that fits into a box that's been predetermined and defined by right-wing politicians and pundits like Ben Shapiro of all people isn't necessarily something that I am going to find attractive. It sounds boring and unoriginal to me, among other things, and anyone who deliberately molds themselves into an image that, Marjorie Taylor Greene would find attractive based on their own insecurities is the worst kind of poser. Just be you. If a God-fearing, football-loving, conservative Southern man is who you are, then be you. And if that's not you, you can still drive a truck. Although they are really bad for the environment, so maybe consider some other options. Today, the political spectrum has become so polarized, which, by the way, was always inevitable, that it's become exclusionary rather than inclusive. For two political parties that are vying for votes from a closed group of people, gatekeeping isn't exactly the best way to covet or acquire votes. There's little room for the pro-choice Republican or the gun-carrying Democrat in the system that we've got, when in reality, those are absolutely real people who vote in elections. Now, I don't know how we make more space for those people in our current system, but the sooner we can learn to look at our diverse population as less than binary, the better off we will all be. Okay, that's it for me. Thanks so much for being here. If you got something out of this, like and subscribe, and be sure to follow me over on Instagram and TikTok.